welcome to Nintendo Ninja News. I'm your host, Chris Tysis, and we're here to talk about a topic that is particularly not very good for Nintendo and not very good for, well, anyone who is implied or is part of the system of basically forced labor camps in China. So basically, there's 83 companies that's been named from a report from the US State Department funded Australian Strategy Policy Institute has named at least 83 companies are directly or indirectly linked to Chinese forced labor camps. So when we talk about 83 companies, we're talking about pretty much everyone. From TDC, Toshiba, Apple, Sony, Nintendo, HP, Huawei, Samsung, Microsoft, Amazon, Panasonic, pretty much everyone. So basically, what has happened is the Uruguay. I'm not saying it, but basically there is a Turkey minority ethnic group, which are basically subjected into unethical conditions, intimidations, threats, constant surveillance. Obviously, they can't practice their religion, political indoctrination, and of course, massive amount of working hours. And the freedom of movement is obviously very much restricted. And there will be obviously threats made against their family members if they don't do as they're told. So basically, this group, 80,000, were moved from one of their main cities to the factories between 2017 to 2019. So, and they've been sent from detention camps of these working places. And these are massive camps for adults where, and very young children also placed in big camps where they're told to only speak Chinese. Now, this is probably one of the reasons why our consoles cost so little, and that's why we can do cuts and things like that. Now, does Nintendo know about this? I don't think they probably know the harshness of the reality of it, but I think that they couldn't go to a court and sit there and say, we had no idea this sort of stuff was happening. And I think all 83 companies are part of the system where they do exploit this type of stuff. If you're going to be getting parts from China and places like that, you have no idea what you're actually getting and the working conditions of things like that. And, we're all basically to blame from the companies who get the parts for it to me who go out and buy a Switch for only, $470 or $300. Now, some people will say, oh, well, we can change this and the cost of the console will only be up $100 to $200. But the cost of these consoles could rise dramatically. It could be over $1,000. And we have no idea how much more, or what the true value of what these things should be costing us to pay for. Because of these forced labor camps. Now, this could cost, instead of $470 in Australia, maybe it should be costing $650 or $800 or $1,000. We don't know. But I think an extra $100 to $200 probably doesn't sound right, because every company, pretty much all these big companies, are using China to get their parts, and unfortunately these labor camps are being used. So I think the cost would dramatically increase if we made Nintendo Switches in Japan, we made them in the US or even in Australia. Well, Australia doesn't make anything anymore, unfortunately. But this is basically the reality of the world of how companies use cheap parts to bring down the costs of their products. And it's a hard thing because, obviously, I'll still keep supporting Nintendo despite what this news has been said by the Policy Institute. And will there be any changes because of this report? Maybe some companies will make some changes. Maybe some others will just go, well, for people in the first world nations, they're not going to really worry about an ethnic group in China making their toys and their products, unfortunately. So the only way to do it is either you boycott, and let's be honest, in the gaming world, when we say we're going to boycott a video game, we don't. We end up buying it in the end, or we bring it to attention on social media and things like that, and maybe you might see some changes. But I think the likelihood of it is pretty low at this point, which is very, very unfortunate and very, very sad that this sort of thing happens. But this stuff would probably be happening in other countries too. Forced labor camps, maybe not to the extreme of China, but I'm sure in other countries that they're not paid as well. They're working massive amount of hours and things like that. Do I have the answer to the problem? No, I don't. It requires much smarter people than me. It requires people who have the power and the influence in the world to actually make these changes. So, if anyone from Nintendo's watching, I think you might need to really have a think about where you get your parts from and how you build your consoles and your hardware. So, that is it from me, and I shall see you later on.